January 1971. The NFL draft room in New York is usually a chaotic stock exchange of shouting voices and ringing phones. But at the Washington table, there was only silence. No scouts frantically checking notes, no general manager working the phones. There was nothing to do because George Allen had already sold the future. He didn't want rookies, he didn't want potential. He wanted to win right now. While every other team was investing in 20-year-olds, Allen was executing a strategy that would cost the modern equivalent of $100 million. He wasn't building a team, he was buying one. To understand the gamble, you have to look at the asset Allen acquired. The Washington franchise in 1970 wasn't just a bad football team, it was a distressed business with a toxic culture. They had posted a losing record of 6-8 the previous year. In the corporate world, this is a company bleeding cash with no proprietary technology. Most incoming CEOs or head coaches ask for a 5-year runway to rebuild. They want to tear it down to the studs, draft young players, and plead for patience from the board of directors. George Allen didn't have patience. He viewed the draft not as a way to acquire talent, but as a currency exchange. He looked at a first-round pick and didn't see a future star. He saw a lottery ticket with a 50% failure rate, so he decided to cash them in. When he took the job, he sat down with team owner Edward Bennett Williams. Williams, a high-powered attorney, asked Allen what he needed to win. Allen famously replied that he needed total control and an unlimited budget. Williams gave it to him. What followed was effectively a hostile takeover of his own roster. In his first year alone, Allen executed 19 trades. This wasn't just shuffling the deck, it was a complete liquidation of the team's youth assets. He treated draft picks like depreciating currency, useless if they sat in the bank, valuable only if spent immediately on proven commodities. He targeted veterans, players other teams considered depreciating assets because they were over 30. The market saw old age, Allen saw undervalued stocks with high dividends. He aggressively divested from the concept of potential. In the NFL economy, a draft pick is a speculative asset R&D that might pay off in 3 years. A veteran is immediate cash flow. Allen looked at the Washington roster and realized he didn't have time for R&D. He needed production on day one. The psychological shift was violent. The existing players in Washington were used to a culture of mediocrity, where losing was explained away as part of a process. Allen destroyed that safety net. By bringing in veterans who had already won elsewhere, he removed the excuse of inexperience. You can't tell a coach you need time to develop when you've been in the league for 10 years. He wasn't interested in a 3-year plan. He demanded immediate solvency. This was a radical departure from the standard NFL business model. The conventional wisdom said you build through the draft to manage costs and control players for a decade. Allen argued that the average NFL career was too short for long-term planning. The future is now, he told the press. It sounded like a slogan, but it was a rigid investment thesis. He was mortgaging the entire decade of the 1970s for a window that might only stay open for 24 months. He was betting that a portfolio of experienced, high-cost labor could outproduce a competitor's portfolio of cheap, high-potential youth. Most general managers are terrified of trading away a future Hall of Famer. Allen was terrified of losing a game in September because a rookie missed a blocking assignment. He valued reliability over ceiling, and to prove it, he was about to pull off the biggest trade the league had ever seen. The defining moment of this strategy, the transaction that signaled to the entire league that the rules had changed, happened before the 1971 season even began. Allen executed a blockbuster trade with his former employer, the Los Angeles Rams, sending 7 draft picks and players, including first and third round selections, to acquire a package of veterans. The headliners were quarterback Billy Kilmer, linebacker Jack Pardee, and defensive tackle Deion Talbert. The media mocked the move. They saw Washington acquiring a group of cast-offs who were physically past their prime, but Allen had identified a massive market inefficiency. In the 1970s, the NFL market treated players over 30 as depreciating assets with negative value. Allen viewed them as undervalued blue-chip stocks that were being sold at a panic discount. This was pure arbitrage. Allen recognized that the league overestimated the value of youth and underestimated the value of experience. He wasn't paying for athletic peak, he was paying for error reduction. A rookie linebacker might run a 4.6 40-yard dash but miss his gap assignment 3 times a game. A veteran like Jack Pardee might run a 5.0 40, but he would never be out of position. In a low-scoring era of football, minimizing mistakes was more valuable than generating highlight plays. Allen was essentially shorting the draft and going long on proven production. The data vindicates his math. If we look at the approximate value, or AV, a metric used to quantify a player's contribution, the numbers are staggering. The historical average AV for a first-round draft pick is roughly 46. The veterans Allen acquired in his aggressive trading sprees averaged an AV of nearly 70 during their time in Washington. He was trading a lottery ticket with an expected return of 46 for a guaranteed bond paying out 70. He wasn't just guessing, he was exploiting a flaw in how the rest of the league valued human capital. This roster construction created the over-the-hill gang. It was a team identity built on the premise that they were smarter and more disciplined than their younger, faster opponents. They didn't need to develop, they just needed to execute. The proof of concept arrived immediately in 1972. While other teams were struggling with the growing pains of rookie quarterbacks and developing offensive lines, Washington was a fully formed machine. They went 11-3, tore through the playoffs, and reached Super Bowl VII. They didn't win the championship, losing to the undefeated Dolphins, but the model had been validated. A team built in a laboratory of trades had outperformed organizations that had spent a decade drafting and developing. However, this model required a financial commitment that most owners wouldn't stomach. Maintaining a roster of veterans meant paying veteran salaries across the board. In modern terms, this is the equivalent of a team operating with a payroll significantly higher than the salary cap would allow, paying premium wages for every single roster spot because there are no cheap rookie contracts to balance the books. Allen was spending millions in inflation-adjusted capital to keep the window open, treating the salary cap, which didn't exist yet, as a theoretical construct he could ignore. To fully understand the anomaly of George Allen, you have to contrast him with the modern gold standard of football management, Nick Saban. Saban's entire philosophy, the process, is built on the manufacturing side of the business. Saban focuses on inputs. He controls the recruiting, the nutrition, the strength training, and the psychological development. He runs a factory that takes raw materials, high school recruits, and refines them into a premium product over 3 to 4 years. Saban invests in research and development. George Allen didn't have an R&D department. He ran a mergers and acquisitions firm. He wasn't interested in manufacturing the product, he just wanted to acquire the company that had already built it. If Saban is the CEO who builds a tech giant through innovation and patent development, Allen is the private equity raider who buys the competitor, strips it for parts, and integrates the best assets into his own portfolio. Allen ignored the 80% of team building that involves scouting and development to maximize the 20% that involves acquisition and game management. This creates a fundamental conflict in sustainability. The process is designed to be a perpetual motion machine. When a star player graduates from Alabama, there is a sophomore behind him who has been developed in the same system for 2 years, ready to step in. The pipeline never runs dry because the investment is in the system, not the individual. Allen's model had a fatal flaw. It had no pipeline. When you trade away 5 years of draft picks, you sever the supply chain of cheap young labor. Allen's team didn't evolve, it aged. And because he had traded the future to win the present, there was no backup plan when the veterans finally retired. By the time Allen left Washington in 1977, the roster was the oldest in NFL history, and the franchise had almost no draft capital to replace them. He never had a losing season, a testament to the short-term efficiency of his model, but he left the cupboard completely bare for his successors. He proved you can optimize for the current quarter's earnings indefinitely, but eventually the lack of long-term investment leads to corporate bankruptcy. George Allen proved that in the business of sports, you can absolutely buy success if you are willing to mortgage the future. He turned a losing franchise into a winner overnight by realizing that draft picks are just currency waiting to be spent. But the lesson remains, you can leverage the future to pay for today, but the bill always comes due. If you want to understand more about the high-stakes economics of sports management, subscribe to Revenue Racers.